Hello and welcome to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and today I'm going to speak about some practical concerns or ways that we can practically navigate this transitionary period that we are experiencing as we are literally giving birth to this new dimension. So I named this show is called Birth of a New Dimension for a reason. And I made a painting that I also named the same thing for a reason. It's all about the events that we are presently experiencing. I like to say we are in the moment of birth, and that moment, of course, this is not just merely a human time scale, this is a planetary time scale, so that moment can stretch on days, weeks, months, hopefully not years, because this is rather uncomfortable, and I understand that we are all under great duress. So the idea is we are moving out of the previous level of reality. And you could call it a level of density. And it was built upon the narrative fiction that spirit or consciousness or pure energy is somehow separate from matter. This is a software program in your mind. I'm not a transhumanist, but I use these words as allegories so we can have a common vocabulary. Brief pause. So the truth is, you are not separate from your environment or from your context. So today I'm coming to you from my beautiful backyard garden. I'm sure you can hear my neighbor's chickens crowing away over there, or however we shall say it, making sounds over there. And I apologize for any background noise, but I'm so pleased to say we've had a break in the torrential inundations, and I'm now able to get outside and get some sun. And I like to joke to people that I'm solar powered. However, it's really the truth. I eat sunlight, I ingest sunlight, not through my physical eyes, because I do not want to overuse the retinas of this body. I want them to last for as long as they possibly can. But through my inner eye, through the practice of sun gazing, I literally ingest the pure essence of nourishment without having to have the intermediary of a plant or a chloroplast that takes that photon and turns it into a starch and then putting it in my belly. So I sit out here eating my physical breakfast, and I also eat my light breakfast at the same time. And all of this matters. I'm bringing this up because I'm here in the context of my garden. I'm not in a void. I'm not just sitting here in a vacuum with nothing around me. There's something around me, and the something that's around me is not dead. It's not inert. It is alive, and it is living. It's consciousness, and it's moving through time along with me. It's like saying, I'm dancing and it's dancing too. We're at a big giant dance party and everything around us is always dancing. This is the more sophisticated understanding. It's like the next level of development in our own biological evolution and evolution as an individual consciousness. So when you first come here, usually as a little infant, we develop this narrative fiction. It's called the ego, and it says, I am separate from my reality. And as a little tiny child, mostly, this is when people explore these ideas, you explore the boundary of where you end and where the world begins. And it has to do with the sensorium of your senses. Like when you can feel yourself touching your own hand or touching your own face, you're like, hey, that's me, I can feel it. When you feel your crib or your pillow, you're like, hey, I don't feel that part. That's not me. And you develop a sense of me versus the world. And there are other aspects to the ego structuring level of development that have to do with name. You name yourself and you say, this is who I am named this. And this other stuff over here is named something else. And then you begin to take personal responsibility for the things that you do, and you do not take personal responsibility for the things that are named other things than you do. And this is like at the level of development when you're like a little tiny kid and you color with crayon on the walls, and your mama says, hey, did you color with crayon on the walls? And you have to learn to say, yes, I did that. And so these are like levels of development. When we reach adulthood and greater degrees of sophistication, we are able to understand the viewpoint that quantum physics has given us. So I'm really not a scientist, but I use this, again, common vocabulary of science in order to convey these ideas that I perceive just directly through my inner vision. So I don't do the intervening steps to lead up to these conclusions. I just know that they are true. That is not scientific, and there are aspects of science that I actually do not respect because I feel that it is a very limited belief system. So on the one hand, quantum physics gave humanity the greater degree of understanding, or the more sophisticated level of understanding that went beyond mere Newtonian physics. And that would be the description of gross macroscopic objects that we can sense with our five senses as they're moving around in space. So that's like, let's get rid of all of the superstition and things that we cannot prove. Let's just look at and measure the things that we can measure with our five senses and develop a viewpoint of reality based upon that. So that's Age of Enlightenment stuff, which seemed like a step up from the Dark Ages and levels of superstition. However, it was its own level of limitations, because it's basically saying, don't look at the world of pure consciousness. Don't recognize that awareness is affecting the physical world, right? So you're seeing parallels now between the development of Newtonian physics and the little baby stage of development when you're developing an ego. And you say, this is me, I feel myself touching myself, I'm chewing on my own toes, as opposed to this is the blanket and this is not me, and when I chew on it, I don't feel it. But that does not respect and notice the non-physical aspects of being. So quantum physics is like the adult, sophisticated, advanced viewpoint where we're able to understand that the observer affects reality. And this is understanding that your consciousness or your awareness, or the fact that you are perceiving the placement of an electron or the behavior of an atom, affects the placement of that atom or the placement of that electron or behavior of that atom, that you're in partnership with your environment. So then we begin to understand, oh wait, we're actually looking at a sea of uncollapsed waveforms, and with our system of perception and the act of observership, we are actually turning that goo, that batter, that dough, into actual cake or bread or pastry that we can eat as if it is a solid object. So now we're beginning to understand the dynamic, co-creative partnership that we as experiencers and observers are having with our environment. So then you begin to have to take a different level of responsibility, because this is not merely the question of, like, now I'm going to do my tough guy voice. Hey, yo, don't blame me. I'm only looking out for number one, right? Like, I just have to take care of the responsibilities that are within this epidermis, and nothing else is my responsibility. However, you begin to understand, well, wait a minute. If I just looked at something and collapsed all of those waveforms into this thing that now turns out to be, let's say whatever, like a giant train wreck, what is my personal level of responsibility in creating that event in reality? So again, I'm a very ethical communicator. I'm a very ethical teacher. I teach things in the right order so that you don't fly off the handle. So the important thing to understand is reality is a collaborative artwork. You're not the only artist. So if you see a train wreck, like there was just a big train derailment, that's why I'm using that as a example of a disaster in reality. It doesn't mean that you are a bad, wrong, shameful, or evil person, and that you're using your imagination wrongly and manifesting this thing, because you're not the only person in reality. It's like, imagine a bunch of different graffiti artists who are all spray painting the same side of the building, and you're working on your area, or you're doing outlines, but someone else is doing the color yellow, and they spray painted the color yellow, and that was their responsibility. So we have to understand that reality creation is a collaborative effort. Or, as I use the analogy on this radio show all the time, we are musicians in a symphony, and the song that the symphony is playing is called reality. And each one of us is a musician, and our instruments are our bodies. And we need to take radical self-responsibility about what our own bodies are doing and what we are creating, and at the same time also understand that we are here within a context. So on the very gross level of physical matter, look, I'm here within a context. I'm breathing in this atmosphere that these beautiful plants that are surrounding me have literally exhaled. And so I'm part of a continuum, and then I exhale it to them. And I'm more than that. I'm not barefoot, but if I were barefoot, the little tiny fungi that live on the surface of my big toe are now communicating with the little tiny fungi that live on the surface of the planet Earth and the entire ecosystem of this little, backyard meadow over here. And they're all talking about what's happening inside of my body, and they're comparing notes about what's happening inside of the larger planetary body upon which I stand, and everybody's having a big conversation. This is the symphony. This is the dance party. So now, I mean, if you read the book out of order, then you might become oversensitized and take too much radical self-responsibility and say, oh no, I'm harming the world just by being in it. That is not the purpose of this message. The purpose of my message, to contrast, is actually to give you the freedom to create a beautiful painting and to understand that you're working with other artists, and that in order to, make this beautiful painting, we all need to work together. So here's another analogy. And this is really this, in the intention for the listening audience, why I'm sending out this message today. It's all of the people who are intending to transition into a higher state of reality in your own body, like in your own health and vitality, in your income, where it comes from, and the levels of abundance that you experience, in your sense of social responsibility, in your sense of environmental responsibility. Like, that's who I'm intending to send this message to. This is not sent to the blind, the ignorant, or the outright malevolent. This is going out to all the lasagnas, all the people that want to lasagna. Right now we're facing a great deal of difficulty. This is why I say we're like the baby under duress. We are being squeezed through this narrow opening. It is very hard to get through. And the narrow opening is that transition from an essentially materialistic world of reality, or the definition of reality that is based in materialism, what you can see and sense with your five senses, and the economy that is based upon that. Everybody needs food, everybody needs a place to sleep, everybody needs a place to poop, and all of the commodities that we buy and sell and trade in order to support our basic physical existence, without recognizing that it is our minds / imaginations / creative energy and partnership with our context that are really creating these physical commodities that support our bodies. So, brief pause. If you have been having challenges in finding the levels of abundance that you require, not only to merely survive, but to thrive, you are not alone. And there's reasons for this. First of all, I've spoken about that we live within a distorted funhouse. We don't live within a perfect world of mirrors that instantly reflect back what you send out. If we did, all of you lovely people, all of us lovely people who are sending out love and compassion and sharing with others without necessarily putting ourselves first, we would have all of that reflected back. Like, I have sent out many scholarships for my online class, and I have shared, a lot of healing medicines with people without asking for them to give me physical money back, but instead asking for them to give me some non-physical or non-traditional form of currency or barter back. And that's the whole idea. It's like what you send out comes back to you instantaneously. And that is also true for rampant murderers. Like, if you're a horrible person and you are a psychopathic murderer and you send out the intention to murder other people, that should and shall be instantaneously reflected back to you, and it would, result in your destruction. And you can see how this is like a fail-safe mechanism within the body of the cosmos, that it was created in order to make sure that if you are a destructive being, that malevolent destruction is focused back on yourself, and you essentially kill yourself and take yourself out of reality. It's like saying, if this is a body, we want any of the diseased cells that are turning into cancerous cells to turn their own apparatus against themselves. And in the body, this is called apoptosis, or the cell dismantling itself. And this is what we would wish for anyone who is a malevolent being, who does not care for the body upon which we survive, which is called the planet Earth. So it's very easy for those malevolent beings in the distorted funhouse to escape the well-deserved reflections of their malevolent actions and to profit. There are billionaires that are horrible, horrible people. In this time and place, you cannot say, oh, you have $1 billion, therefore you are morally and ethically and compassion, in terms of compassion, the best person. No, actually, morally and ethically and in terms of compassion, the best people in a lot of cases are the ones whom have taken vows of poverty. They're the ones who live in monasteries or ashrams, or they have essentially eschewed materialism in service to others. They have, the barest, meagerest necessities, and they're doing this in order to serve the world. However, and I understand that whole value system, but in this moment we need to reprogram, because we live on Earth. Earth is metabolizing. We are like cells on Earth. And a lot of us, I'm speaking to us lasagna people, We need more abundance in order to metabolize more. It's like saying if you are an athlete, you don't need to just have 1,000 calories a day and barely subsist. You need to have 5,000 calories a day. If you're burning tons of energy because you are, training for a marathon, you need to eat tons of carbohydrates. And if you are a weightlifter, a bodybuilder, and you are, trying to put on muscle, you need to eat excess calories, more than you are expending, and you need to have adequate sources of protein. So as people who are intending to uplift and serve the planet, please do not starve yourself. It's like saying if you are a bodybuilder, please don't put yourself on a diet to reduce. Eat enough. And I am putting this message out there because a lot of people have the programming that comes from the previous paradigm or previous context about, monkly goodness, the nobility of poverty and taking a vow of poverty and how that makes you good. And I would really like to stand that on its head. That was a response to, the greed and profiteering of the materialistic world. But in the world that we are creating and heading into, the person who is the most powerful person is the person that has the greatest creative imagination, the most spirit power. And you can use your creative imagination to imagine wonderful things for everyone. So if you're busy starving yourself on a diet so that you don't have enough muscle power, that means you can't use your muscles to help the world. So I'm imploring all of us to begin to use our imaginations to create abundance for each one of us. And here's the big thing. Let me have a little pause. We got a plane going by overhead. We do not exist within a contextless reality as people who require income. So now we're getting down to this whole idea of one little blade of grass. I'm out here in my beautiful backyard. There's many, many, many blades of grass. I do not have like a big empty patch of dirt with one lone blade of grass growing out of it. That blade of grass would not be happy living in that context. The blade of grass is happy if it's surrounded by many, many other blades of grass and their roots all touch and they all help to hold each other up and they all share along the mycelium of their roots nitrogen and carbon and other forms of information in the form of, molecular nutrition. So let's talk about people who are here on Earth with the intention to serve and to help others. I feel that many of us are isolated, like a lone blade of grass surrounded by a big, giant, empty field. This is the way it's been for many years. And that's not normal. It's like you're trying, it is not appropriate to expect you to simply bootstrap yourself on up with nothing but your own power. We need to begin working together and collaborating together in order to create an alternative economy that actually rewards people that have integrity. So this is the whole problem. Right now, the world that we're coming out of is an economic and social context that rewards people who lack integrity. And lack integrity, that means that your actions don't match your heart. And your heart, in your unconditional love, that's really your connection to the divine. That's really God speaking inside of you to you. So here in this world, because we live in such a distorted society, people are rewarded when they do not listen to their own heart. Like think about someone like, let's use a really overt example of a person that has a horrible job. Someone that works, killing and skinning dogs for this dog meat festival that they have in the Far East. Like the dogs are tortured, they're skinned alive a lot of the time. It's horrible, horrible, inhumane. These are not animals. That is not ethical protein at all. But these people, somebody has this job. Somebody out there is desperate enough to actually take the job of being the guy that skins dogs alive for a salary. And we know that that person is going against the dictates of their own heart. Like no one in their heart wants to do that to another being, all right? And now, well, that's a very overt, gross example. Now let's just do sliding down the slope a little ways. Well, how about someone who works as an executive, like in, a petroleum company that is responsible for dumping thousands of, crude oil gallons on like the Gulf of Mexico. So all of these animals were horribly tortured and even humans were horribly polluted by that action. But they are not personally responsible from, dumping the oil there, but their actions and what they did and their complicity made it happen. that person is also so desperate that they have this job that they don't listen to the dictates of their own heart. Or let's talk about anybody that does anything that is a job of violence. Like if you're in the military and your job is to pick up a gun and shoot someone else, and that is your job, and so many people who are in the military right now are there because it is not something, let's say it is, they have minimal options, and so they're choosing that. But there's always options. There's always better options. So what I'm trying to portray here is that that's just on the very overt level of the scale. The necessity of people not listening to their own heart and their own divine connection in order to participate in some level of violence just to get paid here. But it goes beyond that. You can work in a job that's a totally peaceful job, you're a retail clerk selling stuff at a store, but you're still participating in the economy, and there's some level of violence if you work at the dollar store, most of the merchandise in the dollar store was created through slave labor. All of the iniquities of the society, of the economy, it's almost impossible if you work in this world, in this social context, to do work that is ethical, that does not have as part of its basic foundation some aspect of it that is not ethical, that is not harming the planet, that is not taking something from someone else. That is really the way that this society has been set up. It's kind of like you have to get your hands dirty in order to get anything to eat around here. It's very, very challenging. Of course, there are some people that are like, no, I refuse to participate on any of those levels. And they might do something like, start a non-profit organization that is strictly through charity and everything like that. But even that, even if you crowdsource something, all of this money, where is it coming from? Someone somewhere along the line had a job and participated in the economy. And the economy, I'm just trying to portray it right now, is by definition, it is distorted. People are paid to do things that are essentially unhealthy, that are unhealthy for the planet, that are unhealthy for your body. It's not fun to go into a coal mine and dig out a bunch of coal, and it hurts your lungs to do so, and it's bad for the planet, and that's why you get paid to do it. So this is the whole idea, that money is the incentive to do things that are against your own integrity, against the health of your own body, and against the health of the planet. So we live within this horribly distorted or wonderfully distorted economy or, economic context that basically rewards lack of integrity and totally is not about, how much effort you send out versus how much abundance you receive back. So, first of all, let's just talk about that. Any of these law of attraction teachings are very one-dimensional. They're very simplified. That would be in a perfect system, yes, what you send out comes back to you, and then you could calibrate your own emotions and your own emissions based upon how much money you have. But clearly, there are a lot of people who are sending out really crappy emotions and they're getting back lots and lots of money in return. So that does not mean that they are impeccable warriors of consciousness that are always in a perfect emotional balance and that are always feeling these wonderful feelings. That's just simplistic and not truthful. In order to have that type of system going, we need to set up a non-distorted economy. So part of it has to do with healing the ego. Because even if you had the most ethical, sustainable business, you're growing some type of vegetable and then selling it to others and, using your own compost, and it's a beautiful, sustainable system. Even if you're doing something like that, if you have ego and infighting, then you're back to that same level of unfairness in the economy, that we need to look at the whole entire idea of economy differently. That's what I'm proposing in planting this new meadow. I sometimes feel like I'm just one little blade of grass. That's why I'm using this analogy here in this meadow, trying to grow up and hold myself up, and that there are very few others around me, or that they're there, but maybe they're very far away. And it's so challenging to connect with them. now is the time. We all need to connect with one another and to create this alternative economy. So it has to be sustainable. It should be based in actual commodities and actual services that we require of one another. And we should not allow ego and pettiness to limit each other. And like an example of this would be like, let's say we move to a beautiful, sustainable, economy, and you're growing tomatoes and I'm growing strawberries, and I'm like still a very petty, ego-based person, and I'm like, I hope your tomato crops fail because I don't want you to have more money than me. Like, I'm still in competition with you. Like, that is the antithesis of what I'm proposing here. We need to have an entire, like a new set of values installed within us. The idea that in order for you to win as an individual, everyone around you needs to be winning. This is like the idea, if you're in a meadow, that you want all of the plants of the meadow to be healthy and thriving. It's a very outdated, and I say this all the time on this broadcast, I thank all of the longtime listeners who tune in every time, and I welcome the newbies who are just tuning in for the first time. But yes, so this idea that I always bring up about evolution came from Darwin, and Darwin was alive at the end of the 1800s, and during that time everyone had these Victorian ideals, this Victorian value system that was heavily based in this idea of if you work hard, then God will reward you. And they thought that if people were poor, that it was clearly because they weren't working hard and they did not find God's favor, and therefore they belonged in the gutter. They belonged in the poorhouse. They belonged with, their teeth falling out and starving on the street and with nothing. And of course, that attitude was used to justify huge levels of social iniquity, because it wasn't because they didn't work hard, it was because they were totally socially disadvantaged from the moment they were born. So that ideal was projected onto the natural world, and Darwin and that ideal said, the organisms that survived are the organisms that worked hard and God favored them, and the organisms that haven't survived and prospered clearly are the lazy organisms, and portrayed the plant kingdom, animal kingdom as like this battle royale, where all organisms are constantly fighting against one another for dominance and superiority. And that's totally a projection of the very petty, very limited human value system of that time. Now, in a more sophisticated time of science, this is why I have issues with science, it changes according to human, perception and human emotional maturity. Now science is recognizing that all of the plants and animals and microbes in a meadow, for example, in an ecosystem, are all working together, that they are not fighting for dominance and superiority, that the little tiny microbes that live in the soil at the level of microscopic one-celled life, those microbes have to exist in order to unlock the mineral realms that the plants can live, and the plants are in partnership with the microbes. The microbes are not all pathogenic. Some microbes are so beneficial that I actually cultivate them into compost teas, and I spray them on my garden to keep away the pathogens and to keep away the non-beneficial insects. So what's really going on in a meadow is all of the plants are communicating and speaking to one another. They speak to each other through, it's kind of like pheromones, through chemicals along their root system and also through the mycelium that connects them all. So it's not just plants. Plants are all connected by mushrooms. And there's beautiful worms that go through the soil that are also part of this transferring of energy and transferring of nutrients from one area of a meadow to another, that the plants will communicate, hey, there's not a lot of moisture over here. Hey, there's too much moisture over here. Hey, it looks like we're getting a blight. Hey, it looks like, the sun is burning us. They talk to each other. They're literally a whole complex economy. So now we're at this more sophisticated level in our own emotional maturity and development, in our own perception, like let's say the technological apparatuses that we can build in order to look at life. Like we're beyond just looking at microscopes. We now have ways that we can measure what's going on a much more sophisticated level. So we're seeing, this is what's really going on a microscopic level. And now soon, hopefully, we will make devices that can measure this energy, this non-physical energy aspect. And you can see kind of like, the idea of Kirlian photography, or measuring things that we cannot measure with our 5 physical senses, that the plants are all talking to one another telepathically, that they're talking to all of the butterflies and ladybugs and earthworms and everyone else that's flying around out here, and that it's part of one giant ecosystem, okay? So I would like to build an ecosystem of thought and emotion and socialization, like for friendship, and economy, with a group of like-minded and similarly refined and sophisticated organisms here on Earth. That's what I would like to do. My fellow lasagnas, I say this all the time, I wouldn't want to be just a person playing their music in the garage, all on their own, not connecting with any other musicians. I think it's way more fun to play with other musicians and to have that back and forth and to have that inspiration that comes from collaboration. Well, it is time for us to do this. So I'm trying to say the current social and economic construct within which we have been, struggling to survive. Humans did not create that, and we as humans do not have to continue to participate in it. We can dismantle it, and we can also choose non-participation. But if you just choose non-participation, then you're going to be sitting in a field all on your own. You might not even be allowed to sit in a field because almost all property is owned. This is the whole idea. It's like saying, I'm going to simply eschew society, just going to get away from everyone and live off the land. All right, that would be a wonderful approach, except it is ineffectual because almost all land is owned everywhere. And I know someone who actually had a terminal cancer diagnosis, and they did that. They just left their life behind, and went into a national park and built themselves a cabin and just lived off of natural foods, which ironically enough healed their terminal cancer, and they kept on being alive against the odds. But unfortunately, eventually their unofficial cabin was discovered, and it was burned down, and they were evicted from living there because somebody owns that place. You're not allowed to just subsist and live off the land. So, and that is not by accident. That is totally engineered. This is why we no longer have beautiful nomadic tribes of indigenous people moving across North America throughout the various seasons. The whole entire structure of our society and economy was designed, and the ecosystem in many ways was harmed and tortured in order to prevent that type of fluidity in our movements. The new economy or the new ecosystem, this only really works if we are all working together. So we could use farming as an example, but we do not have to have a subsistence level farming economy. Like, we can have sophisticated technology in what we're doing, but I'm just going to use farms as an example. Like, if you wanted to just go off grid, as they say, and totally eschew human society, you could, and, buy some land or get some land donated to you. So you own the land where you're on, and then you have to create, all of your own food, all of your own medicine, make sure you have all of your own water. It's incredibly labor intensive, and it's very difficult to grow all of the things that you need. Like, in order to get enough cooking oil, you need to have a lot of olives or a lot of seed that you can press in order to get oil. It's a lot easier if you are in community. This is the whole idea of like the village life, why villages developed in the ancient world, because you could begin to have specialization. One person is the baker, one person is the miller, one person is the, butcher, like everybody, and then the butcher trades for vegetables. Everybody's got their area of specialization, and everybody also has their own little garden at the same time. So this is the idea. If you are a lone survivalist trying to just do it on your own, like a lone blade of grass, it means you have to be a Swiss Army knife. You have to be the everything. You have to do it all. If you begin to gather a community around you, you can now begin to have specialization. You can have a person that specializes in being the healer of the community. You can have a person that specializes in being the builder of, things and the maker of things. Like, I make pottery, I make clay tiles. It's a sensible way of doing things. So I'm using this as a simplified example, But it doesn't have to be that we return to a subsistence farming or agrarian society as our alternative to the corrupt and distorted economy as it exists. We can still use technology. Technology is still here. We can still use it. So it could be that like one person is a website designer and another person is a marketing expert. This is what I'm trying to say. Like everybody has their skills. Everybody has what they do best. One person might be really excellent at knitting and crocheting and crafting objects, and another person might be really excellent at setting up websites and marketing those objects. And if you actually work together, then you can have a thriving level of abundance without having to participate in the corrupt economy where people do what they need to do without integrity. So in this new economy, the new structure, the basic characteristics of it, like the defining characteristics of it, is that you do what your heart actually wants you to do. That is a radical thing, because mostly in this world we are taught that you're supposed to do something that your heart doesn't really want to do. Like a little kid, you're like, I don't want to eat my vegetables, but I will bribe you with dessert. And you're like, I don't really want to go to work, but I will bribe you with money. Most people, this is like the sad, sad truth of the world. And this is why we're coming out of this world that's like a zombie world. People are literally zombies, going to work every day in this like automatons, and they go into that shutdown mode where they are not fully alive and fully invested in their senses and in experiencing life, because it's like they have to kind of protect themselves from the profound levels of boredom to which they are subjected. Like their hearts are telling them, you're not doing the right thing every day, and they're like, yeah, I know, and they do it anyway. So and to me it's very, very sad. It's like profoundly insulting to the individual on a soul level. To come here in a body is a huge miracle. It is so against the odds to be able to conceive a baby and have a healthy pregnancy and even come here and to live to adulthood and to have your arms and legs and mind functioning is so unlikely that it is like a slap in the face of reality to be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna, work at McDonald's, or I'm using this not to insult anybody that works at fast food, but to use it as an example of a job that does not respect the full spectrum capabilities of what a human being is. It's working at McDonald's, it's working in a bank, it's working in a retail job, it's working in any low creativity position that is not what your heart truly loves to do. And there's also a difference. Like there are some people that work in a retail job where they're working in maybe a boutique that they own or that a friend owns, in a small town where they know their clientele, where they're selling objects that they actually care about, as opposed to a person who might be working in a giant big box retail store selling items that were made by slave labor in foreign countries, to people that are working on their own, slave wage jobs here in this country. Like there are different levels of being like a store clerk, that it can be a desirable thing. It's all dependent upon what you like. Just like being a fisherman. You could be a commercial fisherman. Oh my goodness, there's such horrible human trafficking at the level of commercial fisheries that are like these canning and processing ships that are at sea for months at a time. People are literally like kidnapped onto those ships, and they have to work, and they work for very low wages, and it's under horrible conditions. And contrast that with someone who owns their own ship, goes out when they choose to go out, has private contracts to sell the seafood that they bring in. Like these are very different levels. And so part of it has to do with sovereignty and whether you get to direct your own actions. Part of it has to do with whether you own the apparatus and whether you profit from, what you're taking in. Like if your ship makes $1 million in taking in fish, then you should get a big salary. You shouldn't just get $1 of those $1 million. But clearly that's not always the case. So this new economy, it does not necessarily mean what I am proposing in this new economy where we all work together and get out of, some people call it the matrix. The matrix is designed to keep you asleep. It means that if you are a person who is really meant to be like painting silk scarves as for your profession, like a professional, independent painter of silk scarves, and those scarves could be sold in beautiful, high-end boutiques for, hundreds of dollars. But instead, you're like, doing a cubicle job, working at a computer, wearing a headset, some kind of marketing or, whatever, telemarketing or something like that. That is not an evil job. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm describing the mundane existence of many, many people. Like they do their cubicle jobs and they, pick up some food at whatever, Panera on the way home, pick up a prepared meal for their family and then take it home, and then everybody sits and tells about their day. They've gone to their jobs and they've gone to their school. Like that is not wrong or evil in any way, but it is an insult to the soul, because that human being is functioning on a level that is a fraction of what they could be doing as a truly divine creature. And truly divine creatures don't do the same thing every day. It's like your muscles get bored of doing the same exercises and the same routine every day. They got to be challenged. In order to really grow, you have to be challenged. So this new economy that I'm proposing, it also means that you're not stuck in the position that you do. One of the things of the old economy is you get your position, you get like a foundation of stability, and then you stay there. And it doesn't matter if you're not happy and growing as a person if you have money coming in. A lot of people have to make that choice, like, oh, my job is stable and I get a lot of money, but it doesn't really fulfill me or spark my fire or, I don't really want to get up in the morning and go there. So people make this integrity sacrifice all the time. And it's a small sacrifice, but it adds up on a soul level, because all of this is about your trajectory through the time field. You're like a baseball flying through the time field. And every time you make one of these little micro compromises, then it makes your baseball fly closer and closer to the membrane of death. And this is really why human beings grow older in decrepitude as they grow chronologically older through time, and you lose vitality and eventually sicken and die. It's because of those micro betrayals of their own integrity. Every time they do things that they don't really want to do because it's safe and comfortable, because it keeps a roof over their head, because it is a practical approach. And I'm also going to say that there can be different layers in this, changeover. There can be the vanguard. There are some people who literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain. It's not like they are trying to keep a roof over their head so they can maintain stability and take care of their family and everything. Like there are some people who have fewer familial responsibilities and, can be more fluid in what they're doing and in this approach. So I'm really understanding that. And it can be a gradual transition. It doesn't have to be all at once. Brief pause. But what I am proposing is that we all help and support one another. Like this is a really, really big thing. Our imaginations are powerful. Our emotions are powerful. When you root for someone else's success, you can have a powerful impact on their life. And I see this on Facebook all the time. People will put out like that they are starting a new project, a new business, a new endeavor, a new creative project, whatever it is. Like some people will be really supportive and give them all of these thumbs up. Some people will be like, ignore it. And some people will be competitive on an ego level and be like, oh, I really don't want you to be successful at all just because, just out of pettiness. It's not even a sense of like you're taking resources from someone else. It's just the sense of that you would be getting attention, you would be getting notoriety, you would be getting something when this poor wounded ego petty person doesn't have what they need. So this is the whole idea. You begin celebrating other people's victories and other people's successes, and you understand that that is a literal type of energy or nourishment that is now flowing through the meadow or through the ecosystem that you are embedded within, that you want to see other people being successful. When I see other people that are creative people, like maybe they're jewelers, there's some people that are doing these really cool wire-wrapped natural stone like necklaces and jewelry and things like that. And a lot of them are really independent, and they are independent entrepreneurs that are making their own wares and selling them, online. When I see if they're like, oh, I just made a big sale, I'm like, that is really wonderful. Here's someone who is living with integrity, who is making the things that they love to make, that are not, harmful to other people and that are uplifting the world. Like, the whole idea is this world is like that puzzle game, Tetris. It's like a three-dimensional puzzle where we're trying to fit everybody in to their ideal spot. Some people in their ideal spot would be to be a tomato farmer, and some people their ideal spot would be to be a fisher person. But then your ideal spot might also change. You might be like, I've done this for 5 years and I have now mastered this and I'm now bored with this and I want to change and do something else. Our new economy that we are structuring, we need to celebrate each other's successes. We need to allow for fluidity and learning new things, because what is now boring to you might be interesting to the new person that comes along. So the old paradigm or context is, you did a bad job, so now we're firing you and we're going to hire someone to do a good job. The old paradigm does not have the idea of, you have absorbed all of the nutrients that this job can possibly give to you, and now you need to move on to a new job, like for your own education, for your own personal edification and growth. And a different person can benefit by coming here and learning these skills, like these entry-level skills. That is not the way our economy is structured at all. So we can be in charge of this new thing that we are creating. This is what I'm trying to say. It is a collaborative project. I don't want to be the only blade of grass out here doing this. And in order to do it successfully, we really need to support one another. So my approach, of course, I make original artwork. But I don't just make original artwork, like that's an activity that I really enjoy. I also really enjoy making the videos and webinars and live broadcasts and sharing the ideas that are associated with my artwork. And I also enjoy the teaching process, like teaching people in a face-to-face or, voice-to-voice in an interactive format. That those are all things that I really, quite enjoy. And so I reach out for help with things that are like technological, setting up website things, marketing things, collecting email lists, things like that. And there are people that it's like, they're very good at it. It is their particular joy and their particular desire. And they don't have to do that for the next 60 years of their life. Like, this is the whole idea, that at a certain point, setting up a website is fun and interesting and desirable as an activity, and then you might become bored with that. So there should be a different person that takes on that activity, and that we can all be helping one another to achieve these levels of abundance. I'm using setting up a website as an example because I gave a scholarship to my online class to someone a couple of years ago, who then helped me by setting up my website so that it looked a lot more professional and was more accessible to my students, and it got more people to take the class. This is the type of partnership that I'm talking about, and that was only between two people. Imagine how powerful this type of new ecosystem of sharing could be if we got together many, many people. So this is what I'm trying to say. I know this is like at the tail end of a very long broadcast, but I'm finally like coming into the real meat and potatoes here. If you as an individual person have been finding that it is very, very hard for you to live with integrity, follow your own heart, follow your own dreams, do the things that you know you need to be doing on earth, and to survive within the corrupt economy, it's not your fault, and it's not because you don't have a strong heart or a strong will or a lot of spirit power. You have all of those things. It's because you didn't have the context around you. We're supposed to be like a team, like any kind of sports team, a soccer team, a football team, like a basketball team. I pass the ball to you and you pass the ball to the next guy, and then that guy passes the ball to the next guy. If you're just trying to dribble on your own and get the ball into the hoop without any team support, like that is almost impossible. It's a horrible, difficult battle. And so many of us, I won't say all of us, but so many of us have been facing exactly that in our life challenge. So the point is, we can all benefit if we stop trying to do this on our own. We can all benefit if we all now really make a concerted effort to do this. So again, it doesn't have to be a purely impractical approach. Like, it's not all about non-physical, like cyber assets. Let's say a person, because I made an online class and then another person made my website, and all of those things are, virtual or digital. They're not physical, substantive things. But I wanted to use that as an example too, because not just to think of this as, subsistence farming, but I also, I'm a 215 patient here in California. That means that I am legally allowed to grow medical cannabis, and I can grow it for myself, and I can legally share it with other patients. And I bring that up because that is an actual physical commodity that I have for myself and that I can use to help others. And, I can say this on the radio because this is a legal activity that I do and that others do. And it's an example of how we can create a sophisticated new approach to where we live, where we get our food from, where we get our medicine from, and how we offer services to one another. That is where we are all now collaborating instead of competing. This is it, like creating the alternative to the corrupt system. So the alternative, just keep going over this again. It does not mean that we have to go back to the 1800s or live like the Amish, even though that could be kind of good because the Amish seem like, they're avoiding a lot of the diseases that modern people are getting. But no, we can, the specialty of some people in this new economy might just be setting up alternative energy sources, such as a solar array, battery arrays, and alternative methods for us to, stay warm, heat our house, and heat water without having to use electricity. Now you're starting to understand. Each person has their own set of talents and skills and inner desires, and that we use those talents and skills and desires not to serve the capitalistic marketplace, which is that old-fashioned matrix that everybody's been embedded within for hundreds of years, but instead to serve each other. The old approach says to the marketplace, you make me into what you want me to be. I'll work for you. Hey, you train me. I'll do whatever you want me to. Train me to dig a ditch. I'll dig a ditch for you. Give me money. Train me to run heavy machinery to dig a ditch, and I will dig a ditch for you and give me money. Train me to write a book about digging ditches, and I will write a book for you, and then you will give me money. It doesn't have anything to do with your own personal aspirations or how you would like to do things. The previous context or the previous paradigm does not say, when it looks at each human being as they are in development, it does not say, what are you the best at? And how can we take those talents and skills and create a niche for you and what you do best in the economy? So I would say that it is the function of a healthy ego to do that for each one of us as an individual. A healthy ego is meant to stand up and say, these are my talents and skills. This is what I can do or cannot do. This is what I can do healthily and comfortably. This is what I choose not to do because it's not healthy and comfortable. And I now require that you, as a context, give that to me. So the context would be like, blah, ha, ha, you can go be poor. I'm not going to do that for you, right? Because the context is malevolent. It was created by malevolent overlords of consciousness that want to keep you in a state of slavery. But if we create an alternative that is for us, that is not for serving the marketplace, this is an alternative. The alternative, it serves us as individuals and it serves the planet. Because the planet literally speaks to us through our own heart. I bring up gardening as an example because I know so many people who use gardening as their therapy. Gardening, like they work at their horrible jobs that they don't like, that stress them out all day long. And then they're like, I just can't wait to go home and be with my tomatoes, and sit peacefully in my garden. Like, that's just totally amazing because your garden is the thing you could actually grow a lot of your food from and be like, oh my goodness. But that is not what the domesticated human is not taught, that way of thinking. The domesticated human is taught the way of thinking that you must buy your vegetables in a supermarket. A undocumented worker must pick your vegetables at low cost for you. You must work in a supermarket. You must work in a cubicle. And you must spend, the majority of your waking time working in your cubicle so that you cannot spend time doing things like creating your own food from scratch or making your own clothing or making your own anything. You buy all of that pre-made that is made at low cost or slave labor cost in other countries because you are spending all of your time working in your cubicle. And you do that so that after 40 years of working in your cubicle, you can retire, and then you can have a monthly stipend of your pension or your Social Security. And that is all the training and domestication of the human being. Just like saying to a dog, you don't get to go out there and just catch a rabbit with your big dog jaws, teeth, and chew it up and eat it. No, no, no. You listen to me. I am your master. And if you do what I tell you to do, then I will give you a can of dog food. And then you will, have all the digestive diseases that humans get from eating processed food. You'll get diseases just like me. So that is what humans have been trained for. So we Lasagne people, we people of the new economy, we dwellers of this new meadow, this new ecosystem, part of it is this new value system of understanding that you need to celebrate other people's success, whatever it is that they are doing. I do know someone who installs solar panels, and I saw that he, got a new contract today, and inwardly I celebrated his success. It's like when you pray for someone's health. That's real energy. That is real, prayerful energy that goes to them and to their life and helps them in their life. And then that energy is reflected back. When you see someone who's a musician and they get a gig, you should celebrate that they have that gig. That's part of it, is getting away from the competition that has been programmed into humanity from such an early level. So just on the level of your telepathy and your energy, you begin celebrating one another. Then you got to take it beyond the non-physical and bring it into the physical. If you're having an event, you need to hire, people with integrity to be the musicians at that event or to be the caterers at that event. This is all about how to foster one another. How do we foster one another? How do we bring one another up out of this mire? It's like the swamps of doom. It's like this gray place. It's the zombie world, the gray wandering plain of Sheol, the Bardo. It's not the world of being fully alive. How do we help one another out of that hell realm or hellish realm of being zombified and not being fully alive and being able to become fully alive? Well, it's literally, we do it by supporting one another with our mutual economy. So it has to do with buying our products from one another, giving our services to one another, and following your own heart. That also might mean at a certain time you might give something away for free. Like I've spoken on this broadcast, I give away some things for free, and other people give me something back later or something different than I expected. You have to be open to that way of doing things too. This is not the end of this, sharing this idea. We need to talk about this a lot more, but this is just the first time. Thank you so much for being other plants in the meadow.